It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. A major incident declared in Cumbria as heavy snowfall sees drivers stranded across the county.
Well, it's probably nearly 6 or 7 inches, you know. I've not known it here like this in all the time I've lived here.
Israel steps up its bombardment of Gaza as Benjamin Netanyahu promises to continue the fight against Hamas until the end. At COP28, a pledge brokered by the U.S. to triple renewable energy production is signed by more than 100 countries. Neighbors describe heroic efforts to rescue 2 people after a huge explosion destroyed a house in Edinburgh.
She started to say that she was being burned. I couldn't stop. I had to keep going to get her out. Sorry.
Boris Johnson to tell the Covid inquiry that he made mistakes, but his decisions saved thousands of lives. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. Police in Cumbria have declared a major incident after heavy snow and ice caused severe disruption across the county. A multi-agency response has been taking place with an emergency refuge set up in the town of Ambleside. Police have warned drivers not to travel unless absolutely necessary, as low temperatures, ice and snow are expected until the early hours of tomorrow morning. Well, the Met Office has issued an amber weather alert for heavy snow in West Cumbria. A yellow warning for snow and ice has also been issued for the Midlands, Yorkshire, the northeast and northwest of England, and North and Central Wales. Our national correspondent Tom Parmenter reports.
It fell fast and thick, turning the Lake District all white. The roads around Ambleside quickly became treacherous. December has brought with it a proper seasonal feel.
We've had about 6 or 7 inches of snow here, but as far as we're aware, there's lots of cars stuck outside Windermere and up to Saveley over 6 or 7 miles.
Every time the temperatures drop, the decisions get harder. The dilemma these people face in Derby is replicated in so many communities.
We get inundated with messages. People will say, all right, I've put all my money into my gas and electric this week and we've got no nappies or we've got no bread and milk.
Because it's cold?
It's cold, yeah. So you've got to heat your house or buy your food. It's one or the other.
It's something Marion has become used to.
Whether you want to watch TV, you have some washing to do and you say, all right, I'll wait for the washing for another day. I'm not watching any TV today because I have to turn off the heating, so you have to sacrifice one thing or the other, just to keep yourself warm.
In Nottingham, a man died on Friday after sleeping out overnight in a car. The police said it was a tragic incident with no suspicious circumstances. Nationally, charities have stepped up their work to help people keep warm, as homelessness has soared in the last year.
It is a case of trying to give people, single rooms and that kind of thing where possible, but it's opening up shared spaces, community halls, sometimes mosques and churches give us spaces. And there's always that balance between, privacy and dignity and safety, health safety for people, but also, it's a matter of, it's a life-saving intervention to get people off the streets when it's freezing cold.
It is the first prolonged cold snap of the winter, with -10 recorded in North Yorkshire. Glasgow Airport closed briefly early on Saturday due to snow, and temperatures are expected to drop to -12 in parts of the Highlands and northeast Scotland overnight.
It's extremely cold across the British Isles at the moment. Arctic air mass in place, and as the name implies, that's cold Arctic air sitting across us, and it brings with it a lot of wintry hazards.
Sports fixtures were called off across the UK. It was a day for wrapping up warm and not letting go.
The thing is, it's not as thick as it looks, and once again the authorities and the police are warning both parents and children that frozen water is not an extension of the playground.
The weather warnings now stretch far and wide across the UK, and we'll be feeling this chill all weekend. Tom Parmenter, Sky News.
Well, our correspondent, Shingi Mararike, is in Penrith in Cumbria tonight. Shingi, so what's the situation like where you are?
Well, Britain is in the middle of a cold snap, and that is being felt most acutely in Cumbria, where we are. And we've seen that firsthand travelling up the M6 motorway through the county. Parts of that motorway at points were brought to a standstill with cars not moving, people stepping into a service station for a break, for a rest, while they tried to figure out how to move, where to go, and just the impact of this weather on their days and on their journeys over the course of the day. This is obviously one of England's most vast counties. It's incredibly rural in parts and incredibly remote, and that has resulted in some infrastructure issues, including a number of power cuts, for example, and also people in those communities potentially being cut off. A lot of that sort of thing you'll start to see the impact of as we move into tomorrow morning and the amber weather warning becomes a yellow weather warning. But it's worth thinking about all of those things in a place like this, which really illustrates the examples of extreme weather. Cumbria, as I say, is remote, it's rural, and the impact of the weather here you can feel quite acutely. And I think something that puts this kind of weather event into sharp focus is the fact in Ambleside, deeper into the Lake District, people there won't be spending their nights in their homes, in their beds. A number of them will be spending their time in a parish centre in the area because of the weather, which again is a reminder that these sorts of conditions can have a desperate impact on people's lives, and the weather will continue, the poor weather will continue over the next few hours and the next few days at the very least, by the looks of it.
Shingi Mararike with the latest there in Penrith. Shingi, thank you. Let's bring you some breaking news now coming in from France. On Twitter, the French Interior Minister, Gérald Darmanin, said that one person has been killed and one injured after an assailant attacks passers-by in Paris. So he was speaking on X, formerly known as Twitter. The Interior Minister said the police have just courageously arrested an assailant attacking passers-by in Paris around the Quai de Grenelle. One deceased person and one injured person treated by the Paris Fire Brigade. So that news coming into us via Twitter from the Interior Minister of France. One person killed, one person injured after an attack in Paris, and the Interior Minister asking people to avoid that area. We will, of course, bring you more on that story as we get it here on Sky News. Now, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has pledged to continue the fight against Hamas until it's achieved all of its objectives. Earlier, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris spoke about the war at the COP climate conference in Dubai, urging Israel to do more to protect Palestinian civilians, saying that both sides deserve safety and security. This comes as Israeli intelligence have pulled their team of negotiators out of Qatar after talks to secure a new truce in the conflict reached an impasse. Our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, has this report.
There's a smoky haze that envelops southern Gaza now. The aerial bombardment of cities like Khan Yunis is relentless. When there is a break, they move. They're heading further south. A procession of people picking their way through what is now a battlefield from the north to the south of the Strip. Donkey-drawn carts navigate their way around rubble and battle-scarred roads. A steady stream of people moving once again. There is little sanctuary to be found here. Time and again, people ask how Israel's interactive map to find safety can actually work in this environment. Mohammed Reyes says he used the map. He moved and then got bombed.
Look at this leaflet. How can you bomb civilians in their homes? You're telling people that Wadi al-Saga is safe. How come you bomb there? At least warn people before you bomb us. They've bombed 3 or 4 houses. They've displaced people. Why?
The airstrikes are often huge, destroying buildings, shaking whole neighbourhoods. They're Israeli targets for sure. The problem is, it's where people live. Into the rubble they go, searching for the living and the dead. This is a constant, just like the airstrikes. A survivor, dazed and covered in dust, makes his way into one of the medical facilities still attempting to function properly. This man and little boy are treated for their wounds. They're amongst the luckiest of the injured. But those are faces of pure trauma and shock, and that doesn't just go away. The most serious are rushed through the crowds, bundled into cars. hospitals can barely cope. The numbers of dead rises every day. The Hamas-controlled health ministry says 70% of fatalities are women and children. Whatever, doctors on the front line say it is a disaster.
The pressure on the hospital with the number of patients and injuries has doubled. The situation is catastrophically bad. There are no beds for the patients. We have to treat the patients on the hospital floor as there are no beds to put them on.
People are short of everything. Aid supplies initially stopped have entered Gaza, but it's a trickle, nowhere near enough. The ceasefire had helped. It's gone. And the war has resumed, and so many hostages remain captive. At the permanent vigil for the hostages in Tel Aviv, pictures of those now confirmed dead still look down on people who have come to pay their respects. They're desperate for any good news here. But Israel has pulled its negotiating team from Qatar for now. Well, it's clear now that this whole thing broke down because Hamas couldn't or wouldn't provide the names of 10 women and or children who were alive. And so the war started again. Now, the real or only hope for optimism now is that the chief negotiators in Qatar and Egypt can do as they say and get this whole process back on track. The IDF says that its operations continue in the north and are developing in the south. They've released these pictures of soldiers moving through the ruins. The campaign to oust Hamas goes on.
Until we achieve victory. The war continues. The day before yesterday, I instructed the IDF, along with the war cabinet, to resume the war with increasing intensity. Over the past 24 hours, we have eliminated over 400 Hamas targets.
Most people have come from the north and are having to move yet again. In reality, though, there's not much further south they can go. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, Israel.
Well, the Ministry of Defence has tonight confirmed that British planes are taking part in operations to find the remaining hostages held by Hamas. In a statement, it said it was running surveillance flights over the eastern Mediterranean and revealed that British aircraft were flying over Israel and Gaza. The MOD said that they were unarmed flights and were part of an operation to secure the release of hostages, including British nationals. To Dubai now, where there's been optimism and some progress on the third day of COP28, the UN's climate summit. The COP28 president, Sultan Al Jaber, announced that 50 oil companies have pledged to reach net zero methane emissions, the most warming of the greenhouse gases, by 2030. At least 117 countries have committed to tripling the world's installed renewable capacity by 2030 and double a rate of energy efficiency improvements. 22 nations have pledged to triple nuclear power capacity by 2050. And the US is one of several countries to join an alliance to phase out coal-fired power plants. Sky's science and technology editor Tom Clark reports now from Dubai.
Here she is.
Oil and coal made America a superpower. For decades, clean energy was kryptonite. Not anymore.
Today, the United States is proud to join more than 115 nations in a commitment to double energy efficiency and to triple renewable energy capacity by 2030.
If it's honoured, this pledge, along with others on things like nuclear power, could deliver 3/4 of the emissions cuts needed to get to net zero. But 2030 is just 6 years away. Surely an impossible goal. The thing is, renewable energy has been expanding more cheaply and quickly than anyone predicted. The 4 million solar panels that make up this vast plant in Abu Dhabi bolted together in just 10 months.
We're very optimistic and very positive that this is going to happen, but we need really a collective effort from the entire, global community. But we still need to cut some of the, bureaucratic steps and the processes, which some, governments around the world do still have those in process.
Big talk on renewable energy is a lot easier than facing an end to fossil fuels, especially if you're loaded with them. Climate science says that has to happen, but with recent talk of maxing out North Sea oil and gas, even the UK is vague on the subject.
People have sort of heard mixed messages. This is an opportunity here at COP28 to be absolutely emphatic and totally clear that that is a policy that we stand behind. We have to recognise that if we want to address the issue of climate change, we have to tackle fossil fuel production.
As a former COP president, Alok Sharma knows the significance of clarity around fossil fuels. And while his message is for the current government, it's not as if the opposition's position on the issue is crystal clear. Would it not be a much stronger signal if you, as Labour, said we will cancel the licences that have already been granted by the Conservatives?
The right thing to do for security, for investment and jobs is not follow the Conservative example of chopping and changing all the time, but set out a clear policy that says we'll use existing oil and gas fields for their lifespan and we won't issue new licences. And I think that is the right thing to do.
If this historic pledge on renewable energy doesn't make it into the text agreed at the end of this summit, it's not binding. But nor is it meaningless. The world's tastes in energy are changing. The question is how fast. Tom Clark, Sky News, Dubai.
A neighbour has described heroic efforts to rescue 2 people after a huge explosion destroyed a house in Edinburgh. An 84-year-old man, named locally as James Smith, died in the blast. Sabah Chowdhury reports.
There was a loud bang. At first we thought, kids have thrown something at the window or kicked the front door. I ran outside to see what it was. When we rounded the corner, there was just a scene of total devastation.
An entire home reduced to rubble, flattened after an explosion ripped through the walls. A blast so loud, neighbours like Steve say they felt their home shaking. An army reservist, he put his training to the test and managed to pull someone out of the wreckage.
Somebody said they could hear a voice coming from the debris pile. I just went into autopilot and started to try and see if I could find anybody. Once I found out where she was, I just kept moving forward till we got her out. As soon as I realised that there was a fire in there and she started to say that she was being burned, I couldn't stop. I had to keep going to get her out. Sorry.
We don't know what caused the blast in Babberton in Edinburgh, but its impact is visceral. Several homes have been evacuated, and an 84-year-old man has died. Meanwhile, 2 others are injured and receiving treatment in hospital. Their condition remains unknown. But in true community spirit, locals have pitched together, raising thousands to help them rebuild their lives. And while investigations continue, only eerie reminders left behind give a sense of what once was. Sabah Chowdhury, Sky News.
Tributes have been paid to a British soldier who was attacked and killed while off duty in Kenya. The Ministry of Defence says 32-year-old Major General Kevin McCool died on Wednesday. In a statement, Major McCool's commanding officer said the soldier was living his best life, doing a job he loved. Russian police have raided gay clubs and bars across Moscow after the country ruled that the LGBTQ community was an extremist organization. According to local media, police, claiming to be conducting drug raids, searched venues across the capital last night, including a nightclub, a male sauna, and a bar that hosted LGBTQ parties. The raids come days after a Russian court banned LGBTQ groups from operating across the country. 46 men have been charged by police after serious disorder broke out before a football match between Aston Villa and Legia Warsaw in Birmingham on Thursday. 5 police officers were also injured. Yesterday, Aston Villa said they had lodged a formal complaint with UEFA over the behavior of Legia Warsaw supporters who traveled to the game. Boris Johnson is expected to tell the COVID inquiry that he unquestionably made mistakes during the pandemic, but his decisions helped save tens of thousands of lives. The former Prime Minister is due to give evidence next week amid reports that he will issue an unreserved apology and admit his government was initially far too complacent about the threats posed by the virus. He's also set to back Matt Hancock, who has been severely criticised by senior civil servants, saying the former health secretary was doing a good job in very difficult circumstances. Our political correspondent, Amanda Acas, reports.
I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
Boris Johnson's legacy as Prime Minister will be defined by the decisions he made during the pandemic.
Pretty much everyone called him the trolley, yeah.
For weeks now, his leadership has been torn apart at the COVID inquiry by some of those who worked most closely with him.
It was the wrong crisis for this Prime Minister's skill set.
Many of the key decisions were being made by Mr Cummings and not the Prime Minister.
Good morning, Andy. Good morning.
But this week is Mr Johnson's chance to make the case for the defence, and the Times newspaper has a flavour of what that might be. It's reported he'll make an unreserved apology, accepting he unquestionably made mistakes, but that the government did make the right decisions at the right times, preventing the NHS from being overwhelmed and ultimately saving hundreds of thousands of lives.
If Boris thinks he needs to apologise for what went wrong, then so be it. But I don't think we should really navel gaze too much about what went on right then, because I think every nation across the planet was in a very serious situation and just did what they thought was right at the time.
Boris Johnson's team have denied leaking this information, with allies describing the quotes as partial and garbled. But we do know the former PM has been working hard on his arguments ahead of this appearance with his legal team. We'll find out next week whether they stand up to hours of scrutiny at the hands of the inquiry's lawyers. Justifications aren't what the bereaved families want to hear. Naomi Phillips' mother Christina died of COVID in January 2021.
We couldn't visit her in hospital and we weren't able to be with her when she died, which is still very painful. His own Chief of Staff, Edward Lister, confirmed that he said, let the bodies pile high, rather than go into a second lockdown. And I want to hear him explain how having that view meant that he got the big call right.
Some members of the public are keen for an apology.
The whole situation could have been handled a lot better. I feel like it's only right that he gets in front of everyone and says sorry for it.
I think breaking the rules that he himself set when so many in the country abided by them is what was a real failure of leadership that he should apologise for.
For Boris Johnson, it's a chance to try and rebuild his reputation after the scandal of Partygate. For the inquiry, it's a key moment to draw lessons from the very top of government. Amanda Acas, Sky News.
Sir Keir Starmer has praised Margaret Thatcher in a newspaper article. In tomorrow's Sunday Telegraph, the Labour leader also accuses the government of failing to realise the possibilities of Brexit. Well, our political correspondent, Amanda Acas, joins me now from Westminster for more on this. Amanda, is this a case of Sir Keir trying to woo Conservative voters, do you think?
Absolutely, and indeed unashamedly so. This is really quite an audacious land grab, attempting to woo disaffected Conservative voters in the run-up to the next general election. There's been a lot of talk about that potentially being as early as May, if not next autumn. And certainly this is a real outflanking, audacious manoeuvre, really trying to invade Tory heartland territory by praising Margaret Thatcher and in their the party's favourite paper, the Sunday Telegraph, no less. So not only is he praising Margaret Thatcher as someone who he says shook British people out of their stupor by unleashing their natural entrepreneurialism, he also casts himself as the heir to Margaret Thatcher, as well as the more classic Labour hero, perhaps, of the Clement Attlee, as well as Tony Blair, saying they're all leaders who understood that you have to serve the British people, not try and direct them and tell them what to do. Not just content with that, though, he also accuses the Conservative Party of a betrayal on migration issues. This really is an area where the Conservatives are feeling pretty weak at the moment after that Supreme Court decision on Rwanda. The Tory party really awaiting Rishi Sunak to publish the details of the new legislation which he's promising in order to try and get the Rwanda plan off the ground and get asylum seekers to Rwanda to have their claims processed, to try and bring down the number of small boats as he's repeatedly promised to do when many Tory backbenchers are so concerned about the record figures of net migration as well. And then what's more, he goes on to say that the Tories have failed to capitalise on the opportunities of Brexit. I mean, this will get many people, I think, choking on their toast in the morning because, of course, Keir Starmer's well known for being a Remainer. He campaigned for Remain, but now he's really trying to out-Brexit the Tory party. I think it's a real indication of where he sees Labour at the moment, 20 points ahead in the polls, really appealing to those disaffected Conservative voters, while the Tories really are in a moment of weakness at the moment, the autumn statement not landing very well. The danger with this, of course, though, is that many traditional Labour voters will be absolutely outraged to hear the party's leader praising Margaret Thatcher in this way, let alone talking about migration and Brexit in these terms. But clearly at the moment he's decided it's a risk worth taking and wants to try and steal a march on the Conservatives.
Amanda Akas with the latest there from Westminster. Amanda, thank you. Let's get the latest sport now from Sky Sports News and Selena.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
John, welcome to Old Trafford.
Thanks very much.
You're a man of many talents, but we're interested in you today for one major reason.
Okay.
Season ticket holder at Manchester United, and you tell me you're in the where?
I believe I'm in the E of Manchester, towards the back of that bottom tier there. Every time I sort of do a job or sign on to something, I always think, well, at least that's my season tickets secured for another season. It's always my priority. I'd hate to be without it.
Can you have any recollection of that, the first time you actually walked through the steps or the pitch, saw the players?
I just couldn't believe it. I've got very, very clear memories of that game. It was New Year's Day, 2003, and we played Sunderland at Old Trafford, and it was kind of the perfect first game to go to, really. That was in the era when we had Scholesy starting, and we had Beckham starting, we had Keano starting, and I just couldn't believe that I was seeing them all of a sudden.
So this is David Beckham asking you for a picture. Look how happy he is to be posing with you.
I know. and the weird thing about it was that, you know, David Beckham's not somebody who maintains a look for very long. I don't know how long he kept that for, but I remember the first time I saw him, on this pitch down there was his sort of 2003 long blonde hair phase. So the fact that when I met him, he had a similar look going on. It was just like he'd walked out. He was like he'd walked off my bedroom wall. And then the cutest thing was, probably about a year later, I met Brooklyn at a thing, and I said to him, "Oh, I met your dad about a year ago," and he said, "Yeah, he told me." I was like, "No way!" This is a picture taken up there of me and my dad in the first game that was allowed full capacity after COVID. It was against Leeds. It was the opening day of the 21-22 season. And yeah, there was just something about that day where there were times during the lockdown where we didn't know if it was ever going to happen again. You know, there are times when, if your parents are getting a bit older, you don't know what you're going to do with them again. You know what I mean? You don't know if you know, you'll ever share moments like that again. So there was something about getting back in this stadium with a full crowd against Leeds as well, of all teams.
Yeah.
There was something about it that just felt magic.
Tell me about the other players that are huge Game of Thrones fans who are delighted to have you in their contact book.
My closest friend out of everybody, sadly no longer with us, but he's still alive. But he's just not. It was David De Gea. He was a big Game of Thrones fan, and we We texted on birthday. We still do sort of text on birthdays and whenever there's some good news or whatever. But we got so used.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
And that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the journalist and author Christina Patterson and the former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng. Among the stories we'll be featuring, this on the front of the Mirror. Their headline, Royals Unite on Race Row. We'll be right back.
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Our street! Our street!
Well, the plan seems to be to head to the police station where the policeman who fired the shots was based.
And everything you know, his memories is all gone.
In almost every corner, this town has been completely destroyed by the fire. I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too.
We have to get Trump out of the White House.
Is this the moment to reform gun laws?
You know, it's easy to go to politics.
But it's important. It's at the heart of the issue.
I get that that's where the media likes to go.
No, it's not. It's where many of the people we've talked to here like to go.
I report on the biggest stories from around the world. This is a town that is effectively encircled by the Russians.
You say it's all fabrication, what's happening in Bucha?
Destroyed my nation.
We take you to the heart of stories that shape our planet. I can hear now quite a few explosions in the distance here in Jerusalem. A very violent series of confrontations here. What do you think of ISIS?
Everybody here knows the truth of ISIS.
Five of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast.
This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. First, though, our top stories. Police declare a major incident in Cumbria as heavy snow sees drivers stranded across the county. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has pledged to continue the fight against Hamas until it's achieved all its objectives. At COP28, a pledge brokered by the US to triple renewable energy production has been signed by more than 100 countries. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the journalist and author Christina Patterson and former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng. Welcome both. So let's see what is on some of those front pages. According to The Observer, the Israeli military is confident they'll be able to locate and kill Hamas leaders during their expected offensive in southern Gaza, in part because of the information they've gathered from people they've already captured in the north. The Telegraph says that Sir Keir Starmer has heaped praise on former Conservative leader Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, with the paper saying he's attempting to woo the right. The Times leads with the government spending extra cash to secure the Rwanda migration deal. The Sunday People speaks to the father of murder victim Elle Edwards, who expresses his horror that children as young as 9 are being drawn into a world of gun crime. After a difficult week for the House of Windsor, the Mirror proclaims royals unite in race row. Also covering royal matters, the Sunday Express has the headline, Charles, I'll never give up on Harry. While the Mail also leads with the royals reporting that Harry and Meghan were snubbed from the Duke of Westminster's wedding. And the Star describes the prospect of temperatures of -12 Celsius lasting until Christmas as the Polar Express. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code that you'll see on screen during the program, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Christina Patterson and Anita Boateng. Thank you both for being with us. Let's start straight away with front page of The Observer, focusing on the Middle East, as some of the other papers are, of course. The Observer headline, Israel using Hamas prisoners to track down terror chiefs. Anita, talk us through exactly how they plan to do this.
Yes, so the story is about how Israel's military chiefs are going to push into southern Gaza. They believe they've acquired some intelligence from some of the captives that have now been freed, and they're specifically aiming to target the leaders of Hamas, in particular Yahya Sinwar, obviously the actual leader, that they think will cause a kind of collapse in the organisation. Now, you know, this is incredibly challenging to actually deliver, and actually there is no guarantee that with the structure of Hamas and its military wing that targeting a few officials is going to, you know, eradicate Hamas as a significant force. And so The Observer also covers off the fact that, you know, the challenges over the truce, which has obviously not held, and the pressure and hardening of language on both sides to sort of blame the other side for why the truce hasn't held. So overall, a fairly bleak story, even in the context of how they are targeting now some of the leaders in the hope that that changes the balance in this conflict.
And of course, a lot of the senior leadership isn't in Gaza at all. I mean, we see them, for example, in Doha, in Qatar, and other countries as well. But I guess, Christina, there's a pressure now for Israel to give some kind of strategy of what they're going to do as this ceases.
Well, I think they have been under enormous pressure from Biden, absolutely rightly, to reduce civilian casualties, because more than 15,000 civilians have been killed in Gaza, most of them women and children, and it is an absolute tragedy. And I think the whole situation is just so tragic, because one fully understands why Israel wants to wipe out Gaza, Gaza wants to wipe out Israel, and what Hamas wants to wipe out Hamas. And what Hamas did on the 7th of October was horrendous, and further details emerge all the time of quite how horrendous that was. The key issue, apart from killing an enormous number and injuring an enormous number of civilians and making them homeless, is there an achievable goal here? And it's very hard to see how this is achievable, because it is literally, in a sense, like looking for a needle in a haystack. And what Israel seems to be doing is destroying the haystack in order to get to the needles. And it seems they've actually killed a relatively small number of Hamas fighters so far. Estimates are 5,000 to 10,000 of about 40,000. And they've just expelled everybody from North Gaza. So there are currently about, I think, 1.5 million people who are now homeless in Gaza. And now they're telling them that they have to leave South Gaza or targeted bits of South Gaza. So It's very hard to see what's going to happen to those people beyond tragedy, really, either illness, disease, homelessness, refugeedom, or death or injury. And also, it's very hard to see how that is going to achieve any military aims. So I think unless there is diplomacy is what is ultimately going to solve this, and that is going to have to be the Arab states with America, and ultimately, one hopes, with a different leader to Netanyahu.
Yeah, a political solution rather than a military one. Let's go to the Sunday Times. On the front page, an article by Christina Lamb, who's, of course, their foreign correspondent, and it says, "I saw Hamas rape women before killing them." That's according to a massacre survivor. And Christina Lamb has done a lot of work on how rape is often used, very, very often used as a weapon of war in many wars. What does this article, what stood out?
Yeah, I mean, fair warning, it's pretty harrowing account of one of the survivors of the massacre at the Supernova Festival, who talks of seeing up to 10 Hamas fighters beating and raping a woman who was begging for them to kill her. So, I mean, that's just the opening paragraph. It really takes you through some of the instances of women attempted to be beheaded, the number of women, of bodies that were recovered that saw evidence of rape. And it turns to two sort of elements of this conflict, really, which is partly the role of the UN. So there has been some criticism of the UN in not highlighting the particular gender-based violence that women have undergone as a result of this conflict. And it also kind of speaks to some of the despair that centres around the broader feminists who have been trying to kind of raise the profile of this particular component, and the continued concern that women are going to continue to be targeted as part of this conflict. But ultimately, definitely one that it's worth reading in full, because it's something that we can't turn our faces away from.
Because actually it was interesting when the UN has come under accusations that they've kind of ignored this aspect, and Antonio Guterres tweeted something about the need for more investigations a few days ago. Exactly. I mean, October 7th was so horrific and then so much happened, but do you agree that this aspect was sort of overlooked, whether intentionally or not?
Totally. And Christina Lamb has done extensive work on rape as a weapon of war, and she even wrote a book about it. Very harrowing book. But I have to say, the silence of the left on this issue has been utterly disgraceful. Where have all those Me Too women been? Where have all those people been who, more than happy to call out some ageing news presenter or actor who's, made some predatory comments or whatever? And here is an absolute atrocities, literal atrocities that have happened, and people have been silent on it. And Antonio Guterres' statement was far too late. In fact, the impression the UN has given from the beginning is that it only cares about the Palestinians. Everyone should care about the Palestinians. This is an absolute catastrophe. But they should care about any Israeli who is murdered or raped. But these were peace campaigners. The utter irony here is that these are the most left-wing Israelis you could find. They were devoted to peace. They wanted a two-state solution, and they lost their lives and were raped. It is just horrendous.
Let's go to the front page of the Times now. Rwanda to get extra £15 million to seal the migration deal. A few days ago, there was a story that the Rwanda government was sort of losing heart with the deal, as many are. Anita, what did you make of it?
Yes, I mean, I think it's hard to believe that 15 million is the thing that's going to unlock the Gordian knot that is this entire conflict. So far, the UK government is believed to have given around £140 million to Rwanda. So the idea of this 15 million is to support extra kind of asylum processing. And really, this story is not really about the money. It's about the kind of number of things that the government is going to be trying to do in the next week or so to be able to make progress on this deal. And so we're expecting that a treaty to be signed, and perhaps the new Home Secretary, James Cleverly, will be flying over to Kigali, the capital of Rwanda, to maybe sign this treaty. Then you've got the presentation, hopefully, of legislation to Parliament. But it's very clear that there is quite a journey for the government to go on now to be able to make this deal a reality. And it's not clear, certainly to me, that this treaty or this legislation is going to convince Supreme Court justices that now this scheme is a goer.
Now, we have 1 minute left, but there's a story that I think is surprising. Front page of the Sunday Telegraph. Starmer piles praise on Thatcher to woo the right. Christina, did this surprise you?
It did surprise me, and I'm sure that the Corbynistas will be going completely mad, although they went mad a long time ago. But the thing is, Starmer wants to win. That is what's clear. He wants to win. He will do what it takes to win. Unless they win, they can't do anything. And he's got a lot he wants to do with the Labour Party. There is a broken country here that needs mending. And I think at least Margaret Thatcher, I hated her politics, but at least she was someone. She was dynamic, she was energetic, she got things done, she had a vision, and it wasn't all about her. It was about what she wanted to achieve for the country. And boy, did she achieve a lot. I didn't like what she achieved, but I think Keir Starmer is rightly trying to woo the Red Wall, the centre-right, and let's hope it helps.
Anita, do you think this stuff works, though? Is he going to manage to woo the right?
It's quite a naked attempt to woo the right, so I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's whether it's convincing in the context of some of the other strong leaders, and honestly, whether he measures up.
All right, Anita, Christina, we're going to have to leave it there. We will come back with more of the day's papers. Coming up, the households of the King and the Prince of Wales are said to be holding talks after allegations of racism resurfaced this week. We'll discuss that next.
Street Child is about every child in the world being safe in school and learning. We focus our efforts in the world's war-torn and poorest countries. And look, it's a cause we just ask everyone to get behind. We know that without education, life's opportunities are incredibly narrow. But if you get just little education, everything is possible. With a bit of imagination about the future for the children you're seeing, the actions we take now can affect their 5, 10, 25-year view, and that's what we're about. There are 70 million children in the world of primary school going age who are not in school. So you could fill the entire of the British Islands with children who should go to school, just for primary school, and they're not. So there's a huge amount to be done. We began 15 years ago with one project for 100 children in a town called Makeni, the north of Sierra Leone. We've just gone past the point where we made an impact on the education of 1 million children.
Wow.
So a lot can be done. In Ukraine, we've been repairing schools that have been destroyed by conflict. We have been running sports sessions. The Times ran a piece over the weekend about football classes we're running. One of the things Street Child does is we partner with local organisations, and so we know wherever there's anywhere in the world, I think of a community you know, there'll be great local charities. If something terrible happened there, these are the people I reckon that you would trust the most to come in and make a difference. But where would they get the money from? So we come in, I get to do interviews like this, people get to hear about Street Child, and we collect the funds and we channel them through to those local organisations in places like Ukraine. So we support about 40 organisations in Ukraine, running football programmes, repairing schools, running play classes for traumatised children.
How many kids do you think you've helped?
In Ukraine?
Generally?
Yeah, well, generally it's 1.1 million at this stage, directly, and with the opportunity to be safe in school and learning.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me now, Christina Patterson and Anita Boateng. Thank you both for being with us. Okay, let's go straight to the Sunday Mirror, and a story actually that's been touched on by quite a lot of the papers. But front page here, Royals unite on race row, and that is, of course, the naming of the two royals that had been, well, allegedly, the interview that Meghan gave to Oprah that some people thought had racist elements. What have you made, Anita, of I guess, the response of the royal family so far?
Well, it's interesting. It's been quite a lot of... It's hard to tell whether this is all sort of deliberate briefing, but there is an element of that we can detect in the royals saying, we're going to rise above, we're going to unite, we're not going to rush, we're going to strategise. And this seems to have kind of captured the imagination of quite a lot of the front pages today. And it's really not clear to me how this has sort of significantly changed the dynamic of this story, which was obviously revealed quite a long time ago by the then Duchess of Sussex in the interview with Oprah. But it's clear that the papers are certainly choosing their sides, and there is quite a lot of criticism, I think, of Harry in his role in, I don't know, allowing this story to continue. I don't think there's a suggestion that they told this book that these were the two people that were involved in it, but it's all continuing to be as murky and as gossipy as ever, I think.
You mentioned that all the papers are taking a side. Let's take a look at the Sunday Telegraph, who also has it on their front page. And they're saying royal palaces to hold talks on racism claims. I guess what is different now is that there might be, we haven't seen it yet, not officially, but some kind of response from the people involved.
Yes, I very much doubt it will be. There have been sort of implicit threats of legal action, but I don't think that will happen. I don't think the royal family will take. I think that's always a low, and it never works out well for anyone. I disagree with Anita, actually. I think this really does matter, because the accusation or the allegation is that the king is a racist. And number one, it overshadowed the most important speech of his life, because he has literally spent his adult life fighting for the environment and climate change. I read the book he wrote, I can't remember what it's called now, with Tony Juniper about the environment some years ago. It was very good. He's extremely thoughtful and passionate about this. This was his moment to speak as a head of state to the world about the issue he is most passionate about, and all anyone wanted to talk about was the fact that he'd been named in this Dutch copy of the book and was therefore racist, or the allegation was that he was racist. So I think that does matter. And I think beyond the kind of soap opera of, who is or isn't getting on with each other in the family, I think it really matters that whether the king is deemed racist, because I think it's another issue he's been absolutely passionate about. He started the Prince's Trust, which is a deeply unracist charity and has helped many, many, many young people from inner city backgrounds, many of them people of colour, get a start in life. And, he's been passionate about the Commonwealth and so on. So my personal belief is he is not racist. But I think the other issue that hasn't been properly addressed here, and it may be that there's a generational element of this, is that in the Oprah interview, it was mentioned as concerns about the colour that Archie would be. Now, we don't know that there were concerns. There was probably a conversation. I think that's normal. All my friends who are in mixed marriages would have a conversation about, they've got children of different colour. It's normal.
Let's look at the Sunday Express as well. Charles, I'll never give up on Harry. So it's here. And I guess this reminds you that there is a family, like an actual sort of normal family or within reason, behind all of the headlines. Do you think it sort of resurrected that whole debate, Anita?
Well, I mean, I guess I just think there's less debate. I don't think there's a tension between someone campaigning for people from all sorts of backgrounds to thrive, in recognising some of the structural barriers that certain races face, and also asking questions that are offensive, that have a particular point of view of expressing concerns. I don't think there's a tension between those two things. I think you can be passionately, in principle, against all forms of discrimination and then do things that upset and offend people from different races, especially when that's not something you're familiar with. So to me, I think that I given that they had made it very clear it wasn't the Queen of the late Queen involved in this, I think we all sort of thought who they might be, and it's not surprising that the names that have emerged.
Anita, Christina, thank you. Let me just bring you a very quick update on that story we're bringing you from Paris. We're now hearing that 1 dead and 2 people have been injured by an assailant. We heard that from the Interior Minister of the Interior Minister of France. The assailant is thought to have been attacking tourists, and the person who died is German. We'll, of course, bring you more developments on that story coming out of Paris as we get them. For the moment now, let's take a look at the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, it's staying quite wintry, although the south won't be as cold today. There'll be a frosty start for many, although southern parts will see temperatures rising. The north looks mostly fine, but there will be outbreaks of rain in the south, while central parts can expect freezing fog, icy stretches, and some sleet and snow showers. The morning will stay mostly fine and cold in the north, although eastern Scotland can expect some wintry showers, while the south will be milder with rain at times. Wales and central England can expect some rain, sleet and snow too, and some lingering fog, but Ireland and Northern Ireland will see showers fading inland. The afternoon will bring little overall change.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, coming up next on Sky News at 11, a major incident is declared in Cumbria after heavy snow and ice causes travel chaos across the county.
The 5 of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast.